Most of the guys I knew that when you were 16, you got your driver's license. We never even thought about waiting until you're 18, right? We got a driver's license at 16, and I'm not saying anything, but also just to kind of just throw you a bone, I realized that in those days it was free driver's ed. Your parents didn't have to pay for it, and nobody would drop you off of school. Nobody would even think about dropping you off of school. You either rode the bus or you walked. You know, and I heard a kid say, well, Jesus' parents were good to him. I said, yeah, Jesus walked everywhere he went, so take off. But anyway, so I was so glad I got my driver's license. I looked and my picture was on it, and my name, my address, hair color, which is hilarious these days, right? Yeah. I've always wondered, what color do they put for hair color if you're bald? I mean, think about that. Height and there's even a space here for weight. We're not even talking about that, right? But see, here's the thing. So we all have IDs or driver's license, this kind of stuff. And so if I were to ask you, who are you? There's a good possibility you would rattle off some of the information that's on that card that you have, right? But then I'm also going to ask you, is that really who you are? Because it's really not who you are. So if I want to find out who you are, you're not going to tell me, oh, I'm brown hair. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. That's not really who you are. So the information on this card is really not who I am. It's really not. It's not the places I've been, not the things that I've done, not the titles that I claim. That's not who I am. See, I am who God says I am. I'm not who the DMV says I am. I'm definitely not who the government says I am, right? I am who God says I am. That's a big deal. So now here's what I'm saying. The reason that this is a big deal is because the struggles that we have as people are when we're trying to define our identity, who we're supposed to be. Because got something pulling this direction that says you're supposed to be this, and then God put in the other direction saying you're supposed to be this, right? So now, after all we've done, after all we've been through, the ups, the downs, the bruises, the wins, the losses, all that kind of stuff, we still struggle to find out who we really are. And so just thinking about this, so we all start out with as a nice full can. Clean, smooth, everything's good. 12 ounces of zero calorie fizz, right? We all start out that way. Now, I'm not into the diet stuff. See, my personal feeling, you take the word diet, you take the cross off the end, what do you got left? I'm not taking no chances. But anyway, but we all start out good, everything's wonderful, this kind of stuff. But see, along the way, trying to navigate those rough roads of life and trying to do everything we got to do, oftentimes we understand what it is to get our can kicked a little bit. Anybody ever had your can kicked a little bit? You know what I'm talking about? Come on, I've had my can kicked plenty in this kind of stuff. And so what happens is it's the bumps and the bruises and the dings, and they affect our capacity because, see, this is 12 ounces. I'm pretty sure this is not going to hold 12 ounces. So here's what I'm saying. This kind of pull it on down. Is that it's those rough places in life, the areas where we get our can kicked. It affects our capacity. It affects our capacity to show love. It affects our capacity to be able to forgive. It affects our capacity to be able to trust people because we've got our can kicked a few times. You guys know what I'm talking about? It affects our capacity to be able to show grace and be the kind of person that we really want to be, right? So here's the deal. This is where the temptation almost always comes out of these unfulfilled needs to try to straighten out the dents in our can. Is this making sense now? So that's where temptation comes in. And so we try to recapture that capacity. And so temptation tells us that we don't have enough, so we can kind of fudge on the rules to kind of get more of what we think that we're supposed to have, right? Now, these unfelt needs, they're often born out of our fears and our insecurities. That's just like some basic psychology kind of stuff. We're not going to go to so fears come from the places in life where we felt powerless, Anybody know what it is to feel powerless? Okay. And our insecurities come from the places in life where we feel like we're too small. So what temptation is the desire to sidestep certain boundaries in order to have a protective barrier against our fears and our insecurities. That's what temptation is to try to get by. Now here's where this really gets weird. It gets substantially worse when religion loses sight of the value of those vital relationships and replaces them with rules. So now not only are we getting our can kicked by trying to live in this world, now when it comes to the God stuff and the religious stuff, it's like, that's kicking my can too. It's like I can never measure up, I can never succeed, I'm never good enough. So here's the deal. So now we've got more stuff kicking our can than ever. So here's the deal. So God's solution for the growing gap between God and man is he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to straighten things out and bring relationship back into the mix. Is this starting to make sense now? So that's God's solution. So he sends Jesus onto the scene. So Jesus is fully God and fully man at the same time. That is amazing. He's fully God and fully man at the same time. So God would experience what we experience. He experienced what it is to be born and grow up and live, and puberty and rejection and misunderstanding and judgment and punishment. He understands all of that kind of stuff because he walked in shoes very similar to ours. Now, we don't know a whole lot about Jesus' life between the time when he was born and the time that he's 30. So the story really kind of kicks off when he's led by the Spirit into the desert for the purpose of being tempted. That's where the story kind of begins. And the way it would happen is after 40 days, he's really hungry, he's physically exhausted, and he's emotionally drained. Anybody know what I'm talking about? He's had his can kicked pretty hard. Come on, again, anybody ever had your can kicked pretty hard, right? You know what, if you put your heart out there and your heart's been rejected, you got your can kicked. If you ever trusted somebody and they violated that trust, my friend, you had your can kicked. If you ever thought you were doing good and you blew it, my friend, you've really had your can kicked. You get that. So it's in Matthew chapter 4. I'm going to read this to you just so you know. But Matthew chapter 4, starting at verse 1, it says, "Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the desert to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry." That's a deep spiritual truth. You might not get that. He didn't eat for 40 days, and ironically, he found himself being hungry. How many of you guys have breakfast? How many of you can't wait to get out of here so you can eat lunch? Yeah. He was hungry, right? Okay, so he was hungry. Verse 3, "Then the tempter came to him at his weakest point and said, 'If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread.' Jesus answered, 'It is written, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that comes from the mouth of God.' Then the devil took him up to the holy city and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. Said, 'If you're the Son of God,' he said, 'throw yourself down, for it is written, he will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands so that you will not strike your foot against a stone.' And Jesus answered, 'It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test.' Again, the devil took him up to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their splendor. 'All this I will give you,' he said, 'if you will bow down and worship me.' Jesus said to him, 'Away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only.' Then the devil left him and angels came and attended him." Okay, so the short lesson here, when we feel empty in some way, when we feel weakened by the battles, when we feel drained from the output, anybody know what I'm talking about? When you've had your can kicked, all right? The temptation to fulfill what we feel like we're missing in these felt needs in self-serving ways becomes very real. Okay, so let's be honest. I have never, ever been tempted to turn stones into bread. I've never looked at a rock and go, man, that looks so good. That's never happened. That's never happened, but I have been tempted to leverage my influence and power in self-serving ways to get what I want. I have never been tempted to jump from something really high so angels could catch me. In my world, we call that suicide. And then, yes, you probably will see angels in a not good kind of way, right? But I have been tempted to manipulate relationships in self-serving ways to serve my own purpose. I have never been tempted to worship the devil so that I could become ruler of the world, although I think I would do a pretty good job. So that's one of us. But I have been tempted to avoid inconvenience or pain because I didn't want the hardship that I was sure that it was going to take. See, we know better than to take advantage of people. We know better than to manipulate relationships. We know better than to short-circuit the process because then we'll come up short. So usually we're better than that until we've had our can kicked. Right? You guys with me? Until our fears and insecurities kick in, right? See, that's where the devil inserts the challenge. And the challenge isn't to turn stones into bread. The challenge isn't to jump from something really high. The challenge isn't to worship the devil. The challenge is, if you are who you think you are, then, my friend, you have to prove it to somebody that doesn't even matter. See, that's the challenge. The challenge is to your identity. If you are the Son of God, you have to prove it. My friends, that's where we get in trouble. Because our insecurity rises up and we think we have to prove that we're okay. And when we try to prove that we're okay in self-serving ways, it usually doesn't come out very good for us. So he challenges us. You have to prove your dreams. You have to prove your story. You have to prove your confidence. You have to prove your manhood. You have to prove that you're a woman. You have to prove that you're an adult. You have to prove that you're better than that. You have to prove that you're independent. You have to prove that you're over it. You have to prove your love, prove your loyalty by challenging our identity. If you are who you say that you are, you have to prove it in self-serving ways. Prove it by leveraging what you control in a self-serving way. Prove it by manipulating others for self-serving means. Prove it by compromising your values to avoid the pain of the process. And that's where we get in trouble. That's where the ultimate goal is. After that's all done, you get your can kicked again. Right? We got to stop the process. So we spend a lifetime trying to be somebody. And it comes with a lot of baggage because we've had our can kicked a lot. Anybody in the room relate to the can?
Yeah, hallelujah.
I'm like, dude, that is so me. I used to be okay. But then got my can kicked a few times, right? Okay? So temptation challenges us to prove that we're not what people think that we are, and prove that we are who we say that we are. And so the challenge is, if that's the deal, then you have to turn some stones into bread. Okay, so, and again, for us, it's not the stones. So for us, turning stones into bread, or the self-serving things, are like when we want to get revenge. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Get revenge? Anybody ever tried to get revenge? Come on, need a couple friends. You're like, yeah. Now, some of you are like, nah, I don't know what you're talking about. No, you know, like when he disses you, it's like, all right, fine. Well, I'm gonna go key your car. Right? Like, oh yeah, we're gonna have a friendly divorce. Yeah, wait till you talk to my lawyer, right? So we know what it is to get revenge. We know it's a payback, or the guy that cut you off, and you catch up to him in traffic and you wave at him. With just one finger, but you wave at him. So it's that desire for revenge, or gloating over the failure of your rivals, or cheating the system, or taking advantage of an opportunity that you shouldn't. Hedging the truth. Well, it wasn't really a lie. Or leveraging the weaknesses of others to get what you want. See, the stones are the places where we justify our actions because of the injustice that we've experienced. See, that's the temptation. To prove that you're okay, to prove that you're not damaged good, to prove that you're not as dented and messed up as everybody thinks that you can. Now here's the big problem with that thinking, is that when it comes to keeping self in check, you yourself are not a good self-checker. Right? You guys know that, right?
Yeah.
So just say, I'm going to do a self-check. That's a stupid idea. Come on. According to me, I'm okay. It looks good to me, right? That's a horrible idea. Okay? And so see, that's why we want to encourage you to be part of a small group. Because when you're around other people and you're acting in jacked up ways, you're like, maybe not everybody's supposed to want to kill everybody. Maybe that's not a good idea, right? That's why we want to be connected to some kind of accountability that keeps us in check. That's why we want to practice the discipline of giving through the tithe, that kind of stuff. That's why we have these spiritual practices like prayer and devotion and church attendance and serving on a team someplace. Did you know that without your generosity and your participation, we wouldn't have baptized 30 people last week? That's amazing, right? We couldn't provide help and encouragement to families and seeing families restored and people being helped out. See, it's because of you. The list is endless about what New Life people do. It's because of you. But the most important thing when dealing with temptation, when you're struggling with your identity, is to insert the Word of God into your daily living. And intentionally inserting the Word of God into your daily living, okay? See, that's what's big. So Jesus' answer when he was challenged with, if you are who you say you are, he didn't offer his opinion. Well, here's what I think, or this is my thing, or here's what they told me about. He said, no, this is what God said. Because what God says matters. So my opinion don't mean anything. Your opinion don't mean anything. But what God says, guys, that's the big deal. So that's the thing. It's not my feelings. It's not the circumstances. It's not opinions. It's God's word. You insert it into your daily living, and you watch things change. I want you to notice how he answers. He said, it is written, or in other words, God says. And he says, man will not live by bread alone. He didn't answer as God, he could have, but he said, man, us. We do not live by what goes into our mouth. We live by what comes out of God's mouth. That's where the life is at, friends. That's where we live this thing. It's what comes out of God. See, that's how it defines me. Because if I listen to what's coming out of everybody's mouth, I'm going to be, you talk about kicking my can. I mean, isn't that how you got here? Now, let me kind of back off that just a minute. See, sometimes those outside voices have penetrated our heart, and that's what's wrong. And we're struggling to regain who we really are. That's why it's what comes out of God's mouth that really matters. So we're more than our appetites. We're more than our choices. We're who God says that we are, because that's what matters most. See, an appetite is a desire that is in you. It doesn't have to define you. God didn't create you with appetites. He created you with a destiny. Don't be defined by something so shallow. See, it's when we intentionally, now listen, this is huge. When we intentionally insert the Word of God, the power of God, into the place between what is killing us and the life that we want to live, that's when things begin to change. There's this really cool story. It's in Numbers chapter 16. Numbers chapter 16, it's like verse 45 through 50, but there's a plague that is going across God's people, and people are dying. So Moses tells Aaron, he said, go get fire from the altar. I want you to go get fire. Anybody ever got some fire from coming to church on Sunday? Anybody ever been? He said, go take some fire from the altar. And I want you to run into the crowd, and I want you to stand between the living and the dead. Wherever you decide to stand, the dying will stop. Here's what I'm saying, my friend. You take the fire, the power of God, and you insert that into your daily living, and wherever you insert that, the dying stops and the living begins. Is that how you want to live this life? See, that's God's plan. All right, so see, our fears and insecurities make our lives smaller. God didn't intend for small people to live their life in small places. He intended big faith to be up in high places to define who we are. Because it says in 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 7, God has not given us a spirit of fear, but of power and love and a sound mind. God did not create us to be afraid, to be slave to our insecurities and our fears, but God created us, my friends, to have power, to have love, and to have the sound mind. Anybody need a sound mind? I'm tired of getting my can kicked. Anybody else in the room tired of that? Okay, so here's the deal, right? Here's the deal. He made you a person, a man, a woman. He made you a son or a daughter. He made you a husband or a wife. He made you a student. to be a person who possesses the power of God, who knows how to demonstrate real love, and operates with a sound mind so that the world doesn't drive you crazy and keeps kicking your can. You know what that means? Depression can't own me. Come on, that's telling somebody, depression cannot own me. Sorry, guys, not for sale. Depression can't own me. Fear can't manipulate me. Failure can't define me. And the hurt can't strangle me. Why? Because I don't have to prove anything. Jesus, my friend, already proved it all. Oh, I'm loving this. I'm loving this. Check this out. Jesus kicked the devil's can. Come on, you guys know what I'm talking about. Jesus kicked the devil's can, right? So I refuse my fears and my insecurities. I refuse to allow them to kick my can anymore, because it reduces my capacity to be who God says I'm supposed to be. See, the can says it holds 12 ounces. There's no way this can hold 12 ounces. It's because of what it's been through, its capacity has been reduced. Can you guys relate to what I'm talking about? Because of what you've been through, your capacity for love, your capacity for grace, your capacity for forgiveness, your capacity to be able to trust people. Matter of fact, I'm going to stop right here. The biggest battle some of the people in this room are facing is trust. Your can is so beat up. You don't even know who to trust anymore. You don't even know how to trust anymore. My friends, He is a God of restoration for you today. Today is your day. So here's how this works. He will restore. We still bear the marks of what we've been through. My friend, that's your story. He will never take away your story, but He will restore your capacity. So instead of your story reducing your capacity, your story enables your capacity. Because of what I've been through, I know how to love. Because of what I've been through, I know how to forgive. Because of what I've been through, I know how valuable trust is. Because of where I've been, because of what's going on, I know how to walk in grace. Because my story is not allowed to reduce my capacity, because I have been restored. Anybody in this room need to be restored today?
Hallelujah.
So my answer to the challenges to my identity, God says I'm His. That's a nanner. That's a spiritual word. You'll pick up on that. God says I'm healed. Oh, by the way, went and saw the doctor last week. Checked everything out. I am 100% A-OK. Ha! I'm going to be around a long time. I'm going to get so old and so cranky that I'm going to drive up in front of Jessica and Louis' house and watch them turn the lights out. God says I'm whole. God says I'm enough. God says that I am more than a conqueror because Jesus gives me the victory. So this gets down to this. In Matthew chapter 4, verse 10, here's the final word that Jesus said to Satan. He said, "Get away from me, Satan," because God says, I am better than what you're offering. Why? Because I've been restored. See, my appetites won't define me because of who He says that I am. See, I know that some of you are struggling with wanting to do the wrong thing even though you know it's the wrong thing. Because of what's happened to your can. You got your can kicked. Here's a promise from God. I want you to really get this. 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and verse 7. But we have this treasure inside of these fragile jars of clay, that the excellence of the power are Him and not us. So what's that mean? We are pressed on every side, but we are not crushed. Not because of what's on the outside, but my friend, because we're full of Jesus on the inside. You know what I'm talking about? We have a treasure on the inside. So when God restores you, it doesn't mean that things aren't going to happen. What it means is that it will not crush you. You will get your can kicked a little bit every once in a while. Turn to somebody and tell them, you're going to get your can kicked. Some of you guys say, man, I can't wait to get home. I love being a pastor. I love it. I love being around people, talking to people, loving people. We really are a church for anyone. Now, that doesn't mean that we're going to agree with everything you do, because some of you guys do some dumb stuff. I mean, really, I'm going to think about it. But I love loving you. I would love for us to be able to hang out, really. I'd love to be able to talk with you and hear your story, pray with you and the people that matter. I would love to be able, but see, I'm one guy among hundreds of you. But that's why I encourage you to be part of a small group, because we are New Life. We, all of us. That's why we encourage you to be part of serving teams. Why we want you to connect with small groups. That's why we offer prayer on the second and fourth Thursdays of the month. And that's why we have prayer partners come up here. So let me ask you a couple questions, okay? For those in the house that have had their can kicked a few times. I know there's people in this house that you put your heart out there and you got your can kicked. And it's left you bitter. I know. I know there's people in this house that people trusted you and you messed it up. Major failures, you've blown it. Just kicked your can. I know there's people that there's things happen to you and there's nothing you could do about it and it just really kicked your can. You may never be this again. But God can certainly bring this back to your life. He wants to restore your capacity to love. He wants to restore your capacity to trust. He wants to restore your capacity to forgive and show grace. And when He fills you up, He'll push out enough dents to restore your capacity, but not enough to take away your story. Could I get you to bow your heads and close your eyes for just a moment, please? A couple of questions for today. Question number one. Life's been kicking your can. You've been damaged and hurt, beat up. Matter of fact, listen, I really feel like this very strongly. You're trying to fight off bitterness and anger because of the things that have happened are so unfair. If that's you, could you just show me a hand real quick, up and right back down? Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Come on, don't be afraid. You don't have to stand up. You don't have to come to the front. But you know what? I'm just still mad. I'm still mad. If you haven't raised your hand, just do that real quick, up and right back down. Thank you guys. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That's awesome. Way to go. Way to go. Question number two. You want to be restored. You can't figure out how to find your way back. You feel like you're a million miles away from God. You show me a hand. Just say, that's me. That's where I'm at. Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Just one more question I want to throw in here. I didn't plan on this, but your trust has been shattered. You find yourself looking at almost everything with a very cynical attitude because your trust has been shattered. I'm not even asking you to trust me. I'm not even asking you to trust God. But I would love to be able to pray for you. So if that describes you, while every head is bowed, everybody's eyes are closed, just show me your hand just real fast. Say, that's me, man. I don't trust nobody right now. Thank you. Thank you. Could y'all stand? I am so sick of getting my can kicked. Aren't you guys sick of getting your can kicked? No more, right? I want to be restored. So that's our hope. We're hoping that today you're encouraged and you're strengthened. Today's a turning point for your life.